All right, welcome back to another refining entries episode, and in this one we will take a look at the different currency pair NZD USD, and we will take a look at January of 2022. So as you can see, NZD USD generated 10% throughout the whole January. We will go through the trades, and to be honest, NZD USD is one of the pairs that is quite interesting, I would say, because most of the times it starts to move within the US session. So it's a bit more difficult to find the positions within the London session, but it's possible and it's a pretty decent pair to trade. Even though I would say something like Euro NZD might be even better. But of course, you go ahead and do the backtesting yourself and find those pairs that actually works for you. So let's go through the trades. The first one is a fairly simple one, even though let me tell you why I'm not the biggest fan of such entries. First of all, the only reason why is it's just a very bit early, because as you can see, this is the second candle of the London session. So this is why it's so early. Yeah, I mean the London session just started and you already have an entry. So these kind of entries are not always playing out nicely. In this case, it did, but also a few things to mention. The the candles of the candle size, the entry candle size is also, as you can see, fairly a big one in comparison to the previous Asian session candles. Yeah, and as you may remember from some previous episodes of refining entries, when you have such a big candle, it's okay not to put your stop loss below the entry candle low, because then your risk to reward becomes so big. I mean, it's still 3 to 1, but you are asking for the currency pair to move quite significant amount of pips. So sometimes it's okay to put the stop loss not below the entry candlestick low, because the candle size is just so big. In this case, as you can see, I mean, this candle is bigger than pretty much half of the Asian session itself. So I put my stop loss pretty much at the opening price of the entry candlestick, just like a few pips below the session low, but the natural stop loss, the good stop loss would be somewhere here, like below the candle low. But then I would be asking for this currency pair to move like way too much to actually achieve the take profit. Already, I would say this position was lucky that the pair actually been bullish for the whole day pretty much, and eventually within the first hour or two of the US session, it um, achieved our take profit level. But usually, when you are asking for such a big move, it's fairly difficult for the currency pair to move that much, because that's not crypto, that's not stocks. Uh, Currencies are moving fairly slower, I would say. So yeah, the entry was good because we had the session high, session low, first London candle breakout, boom rejection, back above the session low, back above the EMAs, and a very nice, strong, big green candle. So that that's the trade. Fairly nicely done. As you can see, we had some reaction at the session high, but that reaction did not stop us from uh, pushing toward the take profit. Next trade is a break-even one. Once again, fairly good entry. I believe you can already see why it's not the perfect one. Yes, that's because the entry candle is not actually touching, or is not super close to the session low. But as you know, sometimes you can take the risk on these, especially when you already have some a profit locked in. So we had the Asian session super bearish. As you can see, we don't even see the high in this case. We have the session low. London, first few candlesticks, retest, rejection. This is a nice rejection, but it's not above the EMA, so no long position here. And then boom, another retest, rejection, and then continuation candle. Above the EMA is nice strong green candle. The only problem is that it's not actually touching the session low, or it's not like super close to it. But well, sometimes you can take these trades. And what happened? Once again, we had some bullish push, reversal, and then pretty much followed by consolidation for the rest of the day. We've been pretty close to stop loss here, like very close, like 1-2 pips shy, but well, it played out. So here we have a pretty much a break-even position. By the end of the US session, we had to manually close it because we never leave the positions open overnight. So that's the position. Another one. It's an important one, and let me check why. Yeah, I can see now what happened here, because you should be also confused why we had a short position here when we kind of had a long position here. Well, at least the signal for it, and let me explain. And this is something that you should also take note, because it's fairly important. I wouldn't say it's a rule, but from my experience, especially experience trading this specific strategy, let me explain why I did not consider taking a long position on this candle. First of all, we had a session high, session low. The session was fairly inactive, sideways session. London, we had some movement. We had a break below, then a comeback, not above the EMAs, no long position here. We had an interesting candle here, but it's way too far from the session low to consider taking a risk. We had a comeback, and then this candle is a fairly nice. Yeah, we are very close to session low. We are above the EMAs after a nice strong bullish candle, and also after the break and retest, a break and rejection, I would say. And this is the fairly good entry candle. The reason why I would not take this long is because this candle, your entry would be right here, which means that you are already trading well within more than half of the whole Asian session range. So this can actually give you an indication that the market, at least at this current moment, is super slow and super messy in terms of the movement. It is moving sideways with a very small indecisive candlesticks. This is why when you have such a small range, such a small range, very sideways movement, and you have an entry candle within the Asian session range, and it's pretty much more than halfway up already within the range, it's not the best practice to take these positions. What I would love to do instead, when you have consolidated Asian sessions and even the first part of the London session, is to wait for the breakout entry when you see the break of the session low or session high. These setups are performing way better, and your risk of getting a loss or a break-even trade is way smaller when you're taking the breakout entries. To be honest, usually you will not get an entry as well if the whole Asian session is like that and the first part of London session is like that. Usually the pair continues to be a pretty boring day. But in this case, as you can see right here, we had the candlestick that closed below the EMAs, below the session low, with a nice red candle. And the reason why it's a valid entry is because we already had the break and retest. That's the breakout, that's the confirmation. The whole thing that happened here can be considered as a retest because, well, we had a break, we had some comebacks, some rejections, some continuation, and then here we had a strong continuation below the session low. This is the only reason why it's a better position to take with way higher potential to make some profits because you are trading outside of this whole very slow sideways movement. You're not trading within, because usually what happens, if you would take this a long position right here, what would happen most likely? You would go to the session high and be stuck here as well. Just sideways movement. There is no momentum to break. There is no momentum to break out. So most likely you will be stuck within some drawdown right here and eventually a stop loss because, well, within the US session it started to move, but it just doesn't make too much of a sense to enter in a very sideways consolidative market when you are trading completely within the range. Here, we are trading outside of the Asian session, which means that we have way higher chances to actually see a stronger movement because we are trading the breakout of the range. Yeah, so this is why I took the trade, and I believe you clearly understand my reasonings, and just make sure to make notes when you have such I would say slow and shitty conditions in the markets and your entry candle is within the small range like that, it's better to avoid taking such positions, even though that's a valid entry according to the rules. But common sense and experience also is a big factor when you're choosing whether to enter or not. So in this case, it's better not to. And then we had this candle and pretty much straightforward all the way. Yeah, few candles, boom, we are in. And that's mainly because we finally received the breakout candle, the breakout continuation right here. So these chances are way higher than buying here and expecting it to show some strong momentum for a breakout. Yeah, so I believe it's super valid now. Next, we had a loss. A loss, yep, a fairly decent trade. If you would apply the rule to move your stop loss to break even after halfway point, then you would be out at break even in this case. But for backtesting purposes, I do not, so I consider this as a loss. Well, what happened here, also fairly good entry. Asian session, it's not super active, but it's more active than the previous position. Yeah, I mean, we had some movement. Then we had London. We had some a kind of a breakout, but it's like one pip shy from, like one pip above. So it's not the super valid one. Yeah. Then we had some mess, kind of continuation, but I wouldn't classify this as a confirmed breakout because, as you can see, it's just less than a pip maybe above the session high. So I would prefer this to be a break than a retest or continuation. But in this case, what happened, we had a break, we had a rejection, and a nice strong red candle below the EMAs after the session high retest and rejection. And yeah, it's not also touching the session high, not the super perfect one, but it's like 2 pips shy from the session high. So it's an okay position to take, especially when you already have some profits in. So we took the short. The market went pretty well for the first half, and then within the US session we had a reversal and completely took us out. So when you look at the bigger picture for the whole day, you can see that the market was fairly moving nowhere. It started fairly here, it ended pretty much few pips above it. So it's a pretty sideways movement. Next candle, next position, sorry. A good one, also a risky one. I believe you see why, and this is what I want you to do. When I open up this chart, you should see in like, I don't know, 10 to 15 seconds if it's a good entry or not the best one, why it's not the best one, and move on. Okay, it should become boring to look at these episodes. So the moment you feel bored, that's the moment you actually that's it. You know the entries, you know what's happening in the market. Session high, session low, London, nothing. Retest, rejection, rejection, continuation after rejection. Great entry, but one thing, it is not touching the session high, and you can take these trades when you already made some profits. And as you know from the previous trades, we are already well up for the month, so we are able to risk this 1% to actually make some profits. Stop loss is also, it could be even lower, I would say. It could be somewhere right here, which would be also a valid stop loss, but I just wanted to make it slightly above the session high, and instead, in case something like this happens again, like a small retest of the session high. Well, in this case, it did not happen, and we had a pretty straightforward movement all the way to the take profit area. Next, we have a 1%, which I believe is going to be, super slow market. Once again, session high, London, a break, rejection. We stayed below the session low. Sorry, session high. It becomes like a tongue twister. This would be classified as a potential short entry, but I just did not want it to take another position that is not super according to the rules. Yeah, we already had like 2 or 3 of these, so yeah, it's okay entry, but it's not near the session high. So I just simply said, okay, let's be a bit more patient, or just miss the trade, doesn't matter. So we got a bit lucky because the market came back for a fresh retest and then strong rejection. Still, it is not touching the session high. It is not a super perfect entry where all 3 elements are achieved, but it's good enough. It's good enough. Strong red candle below the EMAs after the session rejection, so it's a good short. Stop loss could be a little bit lower as well, but just to make sure, I made it a bit bigger, but that doesn't matter because for the rest of the day the market was pretty much dead, and it stayed dead for the whole US session, so we had to manually close it, and that's about 1% of profit. Next day, I believe same thing happened. Not the same thing, but by the end of the US session, we had to manually close it as well. If you would apply the stop loss rule that you can move your stop loss to break even on a halfway mark, then I believe this would be just a simple break even trade without you having to do anything. But in this case, we do not. So once again, session high, session low, we had a break, a comeback, continuation. Beautiful, beautiful entry. Stop loss is good one. The entry is good. So for the first part of the day, we had a very strong bearish move. Then it stopped for a while within the US session, mid-US session, and reversed back to the upside. It happens sometimes. It's normal. It's pretty much normal, I would say. Yeah, I mean, not every position is a winning. Not every position is a losing one. It's just happened. Yeah, a mid position, mid a trade reversal. It happened. Okay, so basically, it's a fairly simple break-even trade. Next is a loss. Good entry, but not good enough for the market. So session high, session low, London, fairly kinda a retest, not super valid one, then followed by a real retest and rejection back above the EMAs, strong green candle, and after the session low retest, so that's a valid long position. And what happened here, we had a few hours of consolidation, eventually reversal back to the downside, and eventually moving to our stop loss order. Next is also a loss. That's a very quick one. Very quick loss, to be honest. Stop loss could be higher on this one. I can see it already, but that's a fairly big candle in comparison to the previous ones, like all of these. So I made the stop loss just a bit smaller in this case, as you know why, but you could make it bigger, but then you were asking for a pretty significant move. But once again, this is one of the trades that I said, to be honest, and it's two mistakes, maybe one. One big mistake in this case is that the market is moving too much of a sideways to actually take the trade. And it's still, I took the trade, a short one, and this is why we actually got stopped out. As I just explained a few positions before, when you have such a messy Asian session and then a big entry candle which covers pretty much half of the whole Asian session, it's not the greatest to take these trades because most likely you will get a stop loss or a very slow boring day. It's better to trade the breakouts of the session high or the low. In this case, we had a short here of a session high rejection, and it was not super well, as you can see. Few candles, boom, stop loss. Okay, it happens. And the last trade of the month, a very beautiful one, a very simple textbook trade. Session high, session low. We had a break, retest, continuation. Below the EMA's nice strong red candle after the session break and retest, and continuation. So it's a short. Stop loss is a good one. Take profit is a good one. Pretty much straightforward drop. And we achieved our take profit pretty much still before the US session began. So it's a quick one, a quick 3%, beautiful. So that's NZD USD January, 10%. And I believe you already should have a super clear understanding of how the strategy works and how all of these entries actually work. So if you're still struggling, watch the next episode. And if you're still struggling, rewatch the whole section of refining entries. And trust me, you will actually get it. Eventually, you will get it. So thank you guys for watching. Let's move on to the next episode.